First, Councillors Ali and Best. Thank you. Declarations of interest? No? Chairperson's announcements. Well, first I'd like to introduce our new Head of People Services, Lisa Schroll.
Morning, everybody.
Morning. Morning. Nice to meet you. I haven't met you yet, so it's nice I announced it just to see you. And receive the minutes. Anybody? Any questions on the minutes?
Move for the chair.
Thank you, Jim. 5, recruitment and attraction. Next.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning, members. I'm Deborah Dowell. I'm the Recruitment and Resourcing Manager, and I'm here to report or update you on the ongoing recruitment, attraction and engagement strategies on where we are currently and what we plan to do moving forward. Okay, so if I refer to page, what's on this page 13, new booklet, and look at the brief background 1.1. Obviously, as I said, this is in terms of attracting, engaging and recruiting a diverse workforce. So the first thing is 1.2, the recruitment and selection procedure has been updated and is in this first draft, which is here. It has gone through various people for the very first consultation. It will actually go into the procedure documentation and go out for full consultation over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully I can feed back into that in the next meeting. Just an update in terms of booklets and web pages 1.3 to 1.5. We have had a lot of outdated materials on the website and booklets. So the last year we've spent time looking at those, actually producing a brand new and the first career booklet that we've ever had. It is in paper format. We're on the 2nd edition, which is working very well. And we will put it online quite shortly as well. The on-call booklet as well, we've updated that, and what our intention is every time we publish, we review the booklet and up to date. The recruitment web page, we've got the WDS, the whole time working group, working on that at the moment on the whole time pages, because we know that again that has needed updating for a long time, and hopefully now as you log into there now it's more up to date on there as well. So in terms of the information that's going out now to the community, we're trying to get that up to date as much as possible. If we go to page 14 and number 2, the issues, at the moment recruitment are facing a national issue in terms of filling posts. And in the HR magazine in February 2023, it did say there was an article there and it said about 80% of vacancies throughout nationally are being hard to fill. So it is becoming more of an employee market rather than an employer market. I think you know things are changing. People are looking for great salaries, flexible working, remote working, hybrid working. They're looking for more inclusive environments. So there's a number of things, as I go into my report now, that I think we need to look at into more detail and make us more of that employer of choice. We are making efforts to look at our employer branding in terms of looking at you know, before we could rely on our crest and our values and our credibility to go forward. But now I think it's a bit more looking at employee benefits and rewards and how we can attract them in terms of them individually. So it's a balance between the both. I'm undertaking a piece of work, linking in with the National Firefighters Council in terms of looking at their guidance on employer branding and how we can, you know, become at the forefront. So there's a piece of work going on there and I'm linking it to the actual recruitment policy. I am working across the board with different departments in terms of, for example, media and communications, we work with community safety, with operations to try and, you know, all of us get together and see where we can go there. What we do as well regularly is we look at timelines of processes, because sometimes we found that timelines are so long that puts candidates off as well, or applicants off as well. So we look at things like that, and make sure that they're applicable for the audience, and we've got that fair approach as well going forward. We did a great piece of work this year. My team worked with ops in terms of auxiliary resilience. I know, thank goodness, we didn't have to go there. The strike didn't happen. But at the beginning of the year, there was a bit of an issue in terms of how we were going to get all those resources together and what have you. And, you know, we actually got a figure that would have taken us through to the strike if it had happened. We've worked with Mid and West as well earlier on this year to undertake a control campaign. And it was not only just a control campaign, it was an auxiliary campaign as well. Because again, if we went out on strike, the control operators would have been affected as well. So it was a big piece of work going out there quite quickly. In terms of stats, as you know, we're doing a lot of work on statistics and metrics and measuring. There's more work going on in terms of our business, you know, metric system, information system. And for example, we used that to record where we were going with the auxiliary numbers. So we've used it to test a few things, and hopefully can start using that a little bit more in depth as well going forward. If I look at 2.7, the last 5 years, a lot of campaigning has been undertaken to increase female applicants. And as you're all aware, that did work last year because our figures increased and we had about 20% of female applicants come through. So that was really, really pleasing. However, you know, we're not complacent. We know there's more work to be done, and especially in terms of ethnic minority groups and socially deprived areas. And what we're doing, we're using reporting from the whole time campaign in terms of evaluating where the groups have applied from, etc., to try and get out there more in areas that we need to attract. For example, now before COVID, we started having some really good contacts, like the boxing club in Tiger Bay. With COVID, we unfortunately lost a lot of our contacts, but we've now managed to pick them back up again. We're now working with the boxing club again. We've started going out to more community events. For example, 3 of us attended an event last Sunday called Community Cohesion down in Cardiff, and that was absolutely an amazing day. Picked up loads of contacts. It was so lovely to see different cultures together. Don't know if anybody heard about it or went to it, but it was absolutely amazing. We've got a health fair coming up, and we're also working with some football groups as well in socially deprived areas and female groups as well. So we are trying to get out there as much as we can and as wide as we can. It's very hard in terms of to say and define exactly where you're going, because once you have one contact, they can lead to another contact. So you know, it's about just being out there as much as we can and seeing what we can do, but listening to the community in terms of what they want, because as I said, it is becoming more community and employee focused. 2.8, last May, we saw the launch of the NFCC Recruitment Hub. I was part of that hub, and I work nationally with lots of other HR and equality officers or advisors and managers, and that's now up and running. And it's a really useful resource for anybody who's involved in recruitment at all, because if you look at Appendix 1, it goes into recruitment, from introducing recruitment, what recruitment is, how you prepare for it, what a good application form looks like, what a candidate review looks like, what a good selection process should look like. This is all about being fair and transparent, and we went around all the services looking for good practice in terms of this hub so that everybody nationally could use this. I've used it many times, and I use it to actually link into my procedure as well. So that was, I believe, a really good and helpful piece of work nationally. We're making some inroads with fire cadets. I know this has been mentioned many times before in terms of linking with whole time and how we can get fire cadets then on board and link it to whole time, because we've got that gap from when they leave fire cadets to be actually becoming 18 to become a whole-time firefighter. So one of my team members is working on something on that at the moment, and we will feed back to you next time. We 2.10 talks about the working group. This is the whole-time working group, which is still continuing, because in terms of continuous improvement and engagement. And Appendix 2 does highlight some of the real good work they are doing in terms of engagement. So, for example, now where we had firefighter fit days before, we've now got work out of the watch, and one of my team members has really put a lot of work into this with operations, and people can come in now and have days and work with the watch and do things and ask them questions what it's like to become a firefighter and what have you. And that's really good. It's been really good. Again, talks on here about BMIS, the website. We're looking a little bit at more standardisation throughout the process, and looking at other links in terms of volunteers as well, and linking in. There's a lot of good work there going on, so just to highlight that we are continuing with that work and hopefully making inroads there. So that's what's happening now. So the way forward, what are recruitment and resourcing going to be doing forward? Well, we'll obviously continue linking into the services people can. We want to develop a longer-term service-wide recruitment, attraction, engagement strategy with far more stakeholders. So at the moment now, I've set up a group with media comms, operations and community safety in terms of what that's going to look like and how we can link that then into a recruitment and selection procedure then, and see where we go from there. We're going to continue with positive action events. I know sometimes when we put something out there in terms of advertising, say for example, female firefighter days, sometimes we get a small, and I will say small, comments from people or representatives saying, why are you doing that? We are in a remit because we are underrepresented. We can evidence that. And I think as well, we will be extending that out to more deprived areas, ethnic minority groups, where we need people in the service. We continue to monitor and review our processes in terms of how fit they are. We review our attraction engagement activities, and we've started linking that in with metrics as well. And we keep on linking into the Socio-Economic Duty and Future Generations Act, which does aid us in creating a fairer and more prosperous Wales. And if, for example, you look at Appendix 3, there's a piece of work going on there in terms of, we've got a key partner at the moment with the Cardiff commitment. They're linking with the University of South Wales, and they are actually very key to us now getting into some of these groups. They do a lot of work, and they've got a lot of contacts, and that's one of the key people that we're going to work with. However, because that's in Cardiff, it doesn't mean that we're not working anywhere else and in any other areas. I'm going to link in with the GMs in terms of the public service boards and see where they and the group managers can give us contacts and start getting us out there more in other areas as well. So this is a start. It's slow burning. Things are not going to happen overnight. As Roy Wiltshire said, and Roy Wiltshire was part of the HMI inspectorate in England. Things will happen. It takes time, and you just got to keep on going, yeah. And I think that's the important thing. We keep on going. We keep on being positive, and and working with everyone. So basically, what I'd like to do is just skip to 6.1 and say that, and ask that members note the content of the report, and ask if there are any questions on anything you've read in there, anything I've discussed. If anybody's got any questions at all, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any members like to ask any questions on this recruitment?
Two online, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
Hi,
Yeah.
thank you. It's great to see all the work that's going on. There's obviously a huge amount of effort that's very much needed, and absolutely recognise some of the challenges that aren't just unique to this organisation. You know, the challenges that you outlined are challenges for other organisations as well. So thanks for a really comprehensive report. I wanted to just explore the scope for some of the physical requirements that currently exclude. Obviously, this is a very physical job, that is important, but there's international research that has looked at this. And I was also noting in the next report the volume of musculoskeletal sort of strains and injuries, which I would imagine a large percentage of that is men, which suggests that men are getting injured in the workplace. So some thought is needed around that anyway, which is what you will be doing. And therefore, even more so, why are we then excluding women by having, by not looking at the flexibility around some of those recruitment requirements? I don't think this is an easy conversation for now, but I wondered if there was any kind of initial thoughts on that, and whether this is something that maybe we could just explore a little further in understanding that, given that you've outlined the kind of changing expectations that we have as a society from our workplaces anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. Yeah, that comes up quite a lot. We have reviewed a whole time process over the last few years, and we have actually made one amendment in terms of the ladder lift, in terms of, do you have to stand up straight, do you bend your knees and what have you. And we've had a look at the National Occupational Standards, and in terms we were allowed to make that one amendment. But the problem we've got is, because it's a national occupational standard, that's where our issues lie. However, what we are attempting to do during these fire fit days or work out with a watch is invite males and females to these events, in terms of looking at how fit they are. So, they can do the bleep test, they can do the ladder lift, they can do all these different things. And then our advisors, our fitness advisors, then will say to them, look, this is where you excelled at, this is where you're really good at, but this is where you need a bit more work. And what our and fitness advisors do then is give them sort of like a mini program, in terms of, go away, practice this, do that, and they are very good in that. The other thing is going forward, could we do more with it? Most probably we could in terms of prep. And that's something that maybe we need to look at in a little bit more, but we are attempting to do that at the moment. How far we want to go with it, I don't know. In terms of positive action, there is certain amounts of prep that we can give people, but then we have to be careful then that we're not actually favouring it as well, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Chair, can I just...
Good point.
Can I reply to that?
Yes.
Thank you. I mean, it's really clear to me that you are, doing a huge amount of not work around, but being creative around those national standards. I think there is something to feed back into that, because it seems to me that there's broader change that's needed at that level then. But thanks for the work that you're doing here to make sure that within those we're including as many people as possible. I mean, it's a lot of the skills that are really needed are around problem solving, aren't they? So thank you for that. I do think we need to take that back to the national level. And the other bit was just, talking about the sports clubs. Hopefully I heard this, but kind of we've got some really, the kind of women's sport is really emerging with park runs and rugby and football, and to just, I think, a focus in on that seems quite inclusive as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, thank
Sorry,
you, Chair.
We're getting a bit confused here.
Mm.
Could we hang on a minute, Councillor? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just ask what the sort of dropout rate on both genders are with regard to fitness? Is that something that is monitored?
It is monitored. I
Yeah.
haven't got the figures with me at the moment, but we do monitor them, and I feed them back to SMT and ELT, and we have a look at that because, like as you said, for example, we talked about the ladder lift. We could see they're feeding through the females and some males. Not only females were dropping on that.
Yeah.
So we needed to then go back and reassess and what have you. So yeah. But we are using metrics now more than anything in terms of looking from stage to stage where people are dropping out and why they're dropping out.
Okay.
And so, for example, interviews, a lot of people might do very well up to the interview and then drop out. So now we are going out in terms of now starting to do some more interview techniques with people in terms of what we're looking for, shortlisting, and we're starting to do a little bit more of that now.
Is there support then available for people who drop out? Do you chase them up to find out why?
We do. What we do is we do an evaluation. So say, for example, a whole time campaign, we'll do an evaluation and we send it to every candidate asking them to fill it in. At what stage did you drop out? Why did you drop out? What their views are. And we do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, I can't read them from here. Watkins. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much, Chair. 2 questions, if I may. You mentioned about the outdated booklet that you were reviewing. Is that reviewed on a regular basis, whether it's annual, 2 years or 3 years? And the other question is, you mentioned about 80% unable to fill the vacancies. Is that UK-wide or Wales, or is it South Wales Fire and Rescue?
Okay. Thank you very much. The first question in relation to the booklet. The career booklet is a brand new thing that we've created, and we created that last year because we didn't have one, and that looks into the generic roles. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we're inclusive and we're looking at all roles. In terms of the website, that's what was updated, and we are going to try and attempt to do that every year if we can. At least, but it will be on a as and when basis. So for example, if we change anything in terms of our whole-time recruitment and there's information on there, say for example relating to ability tests, and we change the format, then we know we have to go on there and update it. So hopefully as regularly as we can. We would say, if anyone notices anything on there, by all means tell us, and we can amend it, but hopefully we will, do it in a timely manner. So I don't know if that answers your first question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So question 2 then, in relation to the 80%, that's a national figure.
Right.
It is, and if you have, I have a look quite often at vacancies out there, what they say and what they're doing, and at the moment the number of vacancies that are out there at the moment that are not being filled is amazing, because some of the jobs out there, give it a few years back would have been filled like that, but I don't know, it is an applicant's market and we need to tap into it a little bit more.
Right. Can I follow up on that, Chair, if I may? What sort of percentage are South Wales Fire and Rescue got in regards to the national one then?
I think ours is. I know ours is lower. Thank goodness. I would say most probably ours is. I think when I did it last, it was 28 point something. So I would say about 30%.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Glyn, you wanted to
Yeah,
come
thank
in?
you, Madam Chair. Can I ask, what is the tie-up with the fire cadets? Because it's only quite recently, since I've been on service, I realised that they were fire cadets. In my day, we had the air cadets and army cadets. I was in the air cadets, and all I wanted to do was to go on to the camp and get down the range and fire 3 or 3 rifles. It's standard issue of the British Army. But would you give a rifle these days to a kid of 13? I'll be quite honest with you, it nearly blew my bloody shoulder off. It's absolutely scandalous that no one ever came out and went over and said, look, you know, it's a career in the RAF, you give a flight sergeant. There were lots of youngsters there who were potentially commissioned officers, and I know 1 or 2 guys who become pilots in civil airlines. Now, what emphasis do we encourage the cadets to come into the service? Do we say, if you were a cadet, male or female, yep, you were in the cadets, you could start at a higher salary? Because I was really impressed when I saw it on Pandy last Thursday, and back a few weeks ago down in Cardiff with a training centre. So I'm just saying, do we encourage speaking to these cadets, say, look, this is the career, one day you could become a Hugh Jaquay sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of principal senior officers here where they could aspire to.
That's right. That's right.
The main thing is, do we get these youngsters to come in and encourage them at a higher salary than maybe somebody off the street?
The answer there is no.
I think, can I say that's a pity?
Yeah, because what we do is we obviously encourage them, and I know that, you know, the operational staff will work them and try and get them, you know, inspired as much as they can. But no, they do have to come through the process. The problem is as well we've got at the moment is the cadets only go up to 16, and we can't take anybody on until they're 18 for a firefighter. So this is where we're trying to see now where we can go. So it's not that, and we're not saying it's not feasible. We don't know. We need to look at where we go in with the fire cadets, and we do recognise that there is a gap. There's a gap in terms of if they leave at 16, then all those skills that they've been taught, they go in, and they could go into another role because there's a big gap between 16 and 18. We realise that. But we need to look at what we can do with that gap, and as you said, what can we do to encourage to keep them? Yeah, and that is a
Because what you're telling me now, it's a great shame. I don't want to sound highly critical, but I think it's a waste of time with the cadets if we don't sort of encourage them. I can remember back in the 1980s, if the chief fire officer went into an office and he saw a firefighter or an officer there wearing glasses, he was out on sick. He was out of the service, and that fire officer, or the chief fire officer, was a chap called Fuller. And I think it's a waste, because the members of the public these days still think their perception of firefighters riding on the running boards with brass hats on them, getting to the fire, going in with a big axe and chopping the door down. But we all know there's extra oxygen going in, it's going to create more problems. They don't understand the role that fire officers are in the office looking at fire prevention.
Yeah. We know there's more work to be done. You know, I will say that the people, that the instructors and the branch cadet managers do work very, very well with the fire cadets, and they encourage them as much as they can. And as you said, you've seen that firsthand, which is really pleasing. And, you know, and we do encourage them to become a firefighter, but we do also recognise we've got more work to do on it.
At the end of the day, it's that.
Thank you, Glyn. Martin?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the underrepresented groups. I think it's good that we've identified them, and one in particular are the socially deprived areas, which are, you know, they're located throughout our area, including my own ward, and that's something I think that other organisations are up against as well, is getting that involvement and trying to address, you know, the many issues that they face. Generally a low take up in terms of the workforce, low car ownership and the rest of it. It'll be interesting to see what statistics there are, you know, as you start developing this work in terms of work in progress. And I'll be interested to see how that goes. But there are there's some very good work going on in our constituent local authorities, including my own in Bridgend, where there's an employability scheme, which, if you like, I think a number of other authorities run something similar. And it's, well, a sort of successor to Communities First, which was a sort of national scheme a few years ago. So if you tell me, Deborah, is there any contact at this stage with organisations like that, where instead of perhaps looking at the established clubs, there are people who unfortunately are totally disengaged, and they don't even involve themselves in those sort of organisations. So there's a lot of potential there, which we're not realising.
There is some. We go out to events that are organised by certain people running employability schemes. We attend careers fairs and things like that. Again, that can be increased. And what the aim is, when I talked earlier on about public service boards and speaking to the group managers here, is actually saying, right, what is going on in your areas? Yeah. What links have we got? What links haven't we got? And as I say, we need to do that sort of gap analysis in terms of what are we not tapping into, where are we not going, what can we be doing and building on it. So yeah, that's another big piece of work to do. I do agree.
Yeah, I would have to agree there, because I suppose the amount of take-up, as you say, from the valleys, and I mentioned this before, is probably a lot lower because their expectations are lower in the valleys. And I think, you know, they need to be encouraged more. Do we have open days in just local areas?
Yeah, we do at stations, and there are some very good stations that will do lots of other events as well as open days. They will, like for example, Caerphilly now organise their own Pride event. You know, so some stations do that, but also now we're going out to stations more to run events like Work Out with the Watch and things like that as well. And then there'll be other people there giving you information as well. So,
because people in these communities are not going to go to jobs fairs.
No, you're right. Yeah,
they're not going to go to these various events. They like things on their doorstep before they sort of tend to go out into whatever plan they want. If they want to join the force, they would prefer to look at it first in their own communities, and then if they want to take it up, then they would be prepared to go out and about them further, you know.
I know that Maesteg Fire Station, for example, liaise with Maesteg Comp, and they regularly visit the comp and come up and do activities with the young people there. So there's always some community aspect there where they go home and tell their parents what they've done, and they come in, and there's a lot of that on Twitter and on our school website as well. So there are lots of young people who are able to interact and then get to know the firefighters from Maesteg station as well. So that, I think that's very, very helpful then, coming up to the school, demonstrating the rigs as well. So
it is, because, and especially with children, because they are the most interested parties, you know, children. Oh, hang on, Councillor Watkins been waiting?
Yes, please. It's a follow-on in regards to the recruiting between 16 and 18. Is there any legislation in place that we have to comply with to be able to do anything in regards to that age group?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, in terms of actually becoming a whole-time firefighter or a non-call firefighter, they have to be 18 under health and safety. So that's our issue at the moment. So this is where, as you said, as a service, we need to see if there is anything we can do in between.
I was thinking of something on the lines of an apprenticeship, something like that.
Yeah.
Good point, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that is, I'm sure it can be looked at, and to, you know, to see what could possibly could fit those 2 years in between. Could you come back with something in another meeting? Ruth, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, only quickly going back to the employability thing, just to say, I think it might have been about 2015, the Welsh Government did give the service funding for employability programme. So they went up to Jadiga, Aberbargoed, and they did third generation unemployed. Now that was very good, and it only stopped then when the funding stopped. But from a health point of view, we went out and checked their like blood pressure, weight, body fat at the start of the programme, and say the programme was like 6 weeks or something. Now we went and we checked after 6 weeks because they were given education on eating, physical activity, CVs, how to apply. So they did do a programme and it was quite well run, but it's just the funding stopped. And obviously then the people were taken off the programme then.
Yeah, I think it's about time that, you know, we started saying to the powers that be, you know, if you want to keep these services running, you need to invest more. Yeah.
Just coming back to the point earlier about outreach, this is my 6th day in post, so just
Please do stop this.
For the last 7 years, I've been working on the Business Wales contract with Welsh Government, so a lot of our work is outreach and partnership working with underrepresented groups. So there'll be a piece of work that I do with Deb in terms of partnership working wider than perhaps avenues that have been explored to date. So there's quite a lot of success that Business Wales have had.
Yeah.
You've also got the Youth Entrepreneurship Programme, Big Ideas Wales, which is 16 to 25-year-olds. Only 15% of those go on to start their own business, which means there's a huge percentage that maybe we could tap into there. So there's some partnership working with Big Ideas Wales as well to see how we can tap into those communities.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for that. There is some obviously positive action events going on.
Yeah.
And thank you everybody for the input. If we could go on to the next item now, I am conscious of what the time's going on, and we've still got a large agenda. If we could have the annual report on the occupational health, and I believe an email has gone out from Scott inviting anybody who would like to attend an open day, if they could give their names to Scott. There is an interesting venue if you're into sickness and that, but there are. Yeah, each to their own, innit?
Thanks for that encouragement, yeah.
So, okay, then if we can go to Karen. Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Karen Davis. I'm the manager of attendance management, and I have some responsibility for occupational health. So my report and Ruth's report, which is next, interlink, and we may be able to answer questions more fully from the two of us. So this report today is the annual report on sickness data for the last financial year 22-23. Okay. So the first point I would like to make on this is in relation to 2.1.2, where the overall sickness absence has increased by 10.3%. That masks a reduction of 20% in short-term sickness, and unfortunately an increase of 21% in long-term sickness. If I can ask you to cast your minds back to pre-COVID sickness, we had a particular trend that was happening throughout the year. It would be fairly stable, and then we would have the winter flu season and we'd have a bulge of sickness absence then. And the number of sickness absences pre-COVID was around 70 to 80 people per day off. Then we came to COVID, everyone was locked down, sickness levels reduced, and this reduced nationally as well as in the fire service. And this was due to the reduced contact with others, so it had an impact on the short-term sickness as well as the long-term sickness. There were less injuries because there were no sporting events or other activities going on, and we had limited things. Unfortunately, for those with existing injuries and existing health conditions, they had extremely limited access to treatment. So then we come to post-COVID. So officially the pandemic ended in April of 2022. Everything opened up again, no restrictions. So we start to see more accidents and injuries off duty. We start to see the impact of the COVID years, the 2 COVID years, in terms of treatment for orthopaedic treatment and mental health treatment, as well as the treatment for those who have got health conditions. So the next part of my presentation is on musculoskeletal abscences, and the indication there is that the absences, because the treatment waiting time is so long, this is having an impact on our long-term sickness. I referred to a Senate's report saying that patients were waiting over 105 weeks for trauma and orthopaedic treatment. So this may partially explain why there has been an increase in the long-term absences. We do, of course, as you're aware, have occupational health support, and we have a range of treatment options that we can access, and I think Ruth will probably take you through a number of those in her presentation. But what was evident is that because our staff were sick with musculoskeletal issues and couldn't get access, couldn't gain the access via the NHS, that has resulted in us spending more funding on getting private access to private treatment. So last year we spent in excess of £130,000 on surgical procedures, MRI scans and physiotherapy to get people, frontline staff, back into work as quickly as possible. And that's also reflected in the mental health absences as well. We have increased the number of counsellors, and on mental health spending, that was 76,000. So between the two, last year we spent in excess of 200,000 trying to get our employees back into the workplace. In some instances, particularly in the mental health absences, we try to start early intervention to prevent them from going off sick. So Ruth will see a number of people with mental health issues. Some of them will be in work, some of them will be off sick, but the help is there for them. We anticipate that we're going to see this pattern repeating over a number of years because the wait lists under the NHS, the demand there far exceeds their ability to fulfil that. We are doing our part in relation to this, but of course this takes additional money. The additional money was funded through underspends in other areas within the HR budget. So, you know, that's a conversation that we will have regularly around how much do we need to manage this situation going forward. I'm intending to undertake a review of the occupational health resources, because for a number of years now we've had temporary increases in the number of doctors' hours available, nurse hours available, physiotherapy hours available, etc. So I would like to have a review of that to see whether we can put it on a more formal setting rather than every 6 months go back and ask, can we have an extension on this facility, because the demand is there. If I move on to rehabilitation roles, the rehabilitation roles is something that we started doing a couple of years ago, and we're starting to see the benefits of it. What we have is, let's talk about restricted duties first of all. We've got a policy that anticipates if someone can be back in work within 6 weeks, be fit for work within 6 weeks, we bring them back in, they do their operational training, make sure all their skills are up to date, etc. Their breathing apparatus refreshers and those sorts of things. So we've got that policy that we can bring people when they need it back into the workplace. For those who have been injured on duty or have complex medical conditions, and when I'm saying complex medical conditions, I'm thinking of people that are recovering from cancer treatment and that sort of thing, we're looking to rehabilitate those. Because for some of them, they can be quite young. For others, they're a bit older. And the idea is we give them a rehabilitation role, which is a non-operational role. So that could be in training, it could be in business fire safety, it could be in our risk management team. And we give them that opportunity for a year. And then we're looking for a couple of options after that year. We can't keep them open indefinitely. So they either return to an operational role. If their condition has worsened, then we consider ill health retirement, or in some instances, we had somebody apply for a vacant role in the service, so they changed their role, so they were able to do it, whereas they couldn't undertake their existing role. So that option is available. It's quite intensive to organise, and actually people are very, very interested in it. If I can bring you back to the treatment delays are having an impact on staff from a financial perspective as well. So generally our operational staff have 6 months full pay and 6 months half pay. If they're injured due to a work-related incident, it is 12 months full pay. Because of the delays in treatment, staff are not always fit to return to work by the time their sickness pay runs out. And that is causing extreme difficulties. I met with SMT members in May to make them aware of the situation, because they ask for things like, can I come back on light duties or restricted duties, but for more than the 6 weeks that the policy extends for. So we had over 61 requests between January and May. So there's a lot of demand, but we can't actually fulfill that demand. So we have to be very careful who we put back into these sorts of roles. And that can be a very difficult conversation for senior managers to have with the staff who find themselves in a financial situation because their health has not returned, they've not returned to full health. If I move on to ill health retirements, in 21-22 we had 3 ill health retirements. In 22-23 we had 5 ill health retirements. And in 23-24, so from April, I've given notice to 2 people who are being ill health retired, and I have 9 people awaiting outcomes. So what they're waiting for is for the independent qualified medical practitioner to make a determination on whether these people are eligible to be ill health retired or not. As you can imagine, potentially by the end of this financial year, we'll have up to 11 people who've been ill health retired. I am hoping that will have an impact on the long-term sickness that we're currently showing. In terms of how do we manage the access to the ill health retirement process, we run a panel, and the panel make the determination based on medical advice whether somebody is able to undertake their substantive role, whether their sickness is likely to extend to the age of retirement, or whether they are likely to get better. And so the number of people that we send down to the independent qualified medical practitioner, probably about 80% of them will be ill health retired. It's small numbers, I know, but it does have an impact. I've had whilst I've come back off holidays today, I notice in my inbox one of the 9 has come back. This gentleman has cancer and he has been off sick for about 3 years. So we've got that outcome now, so we can move forward. So I'm hoping that this will have a positive impact for the individual, for the service, and for the sickness absence figures in the future. In terms of what are we going to focus on for this financial year, myself and Ruth are working together to get a lot more from our statistics than we would normally get. So we will be looking at things like the musculoskeletal issues that Councillor Carr raised this morning. Just initially looking at those figures to see if we can see any patterns on where is this happening. Is it happening through gender? Is it happening through age? And now my initial research indicates that it's age related. So where you have people who have, say, 15 to 20 years experience in the fire service, they are the ones that are tending to get injured. A number of years ago, they increased the pension age from 55 to 60, and I think we're starting to see the impact of that through the number of musculoskeletal injuries. Ruth, myself and the health and fitness advisors are working on different ways to keep our staff fitter for longer, because as you can imagine, wearing full fire kit at the age of 59 is different from wearing full fire kit at the age of 20 in terms of your joints. And when you're looking at the £130,000 we spent on musculoskeletal treatment, it's mostly things like knees, hips, backs, those sorts of injuries. So we are looking about how do we prevent the injuries from happening in the first place. What sort of fitness levels and fitness regime do we need to have on the station so that they maintain their fitness? Like currently we measure their fitness every 3 years. We'll be making sure that with other changes to fitness on station, making sure that that is more regularly reviewed by the station staff. Where we find that fitness is better is where a whole watch trains together, and that teamwork seems to mean that everybody functions, that everybody maintains their fitness. So we've got statistics on these, and it's something that Ruth and I will be digging into more over the coming months to look for these patterns and look for these trends.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's going to be interesting to know the outcome of the further analysis on the mental health of why the whole time firefighters went a lot lower. I mean, it's, you know, it's interesting. And yes, we look forward to our report. But if Ruth could give hers as well, so we have joined together.
Yeah, Councillor Norton's indicated he's got a question.
Who?
Councillor Norton, Dan Norton.
Hi, Dan. Okay, go on then.
Oh yeah, I've just got a question. Obviously, you mentioned whole time firefighters a lot,
very good, Chairman.
but on the
No,
stats.
can you?
Sorry, can you not hear me at all?
Sorry, Dan, we can't hear you.
So I've got my volume as high as I can. You can't hear me at all, can you?
Yeah.
I can now, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I got my volume on 100 now. So yeah, you mentioned obviously whole time firefighters. There's an issue there, but on the stats, it's retained firefighters which had the biggest increase of injuries. So I just wanted to have obviously information why obviously that subset has gone up a lot more.
Yeah, that's what we'll be looking into, Councillor. Why it is that the on-call staff have had such an increase in mental health absences, both whole time and on call have had a similar increase in their musculoskeletal injuries. So there's a lot of work for us to do around this.
Can I ask a question based on that?
Yeah.
So 2.4.1, you say that support staff or staff given rehabilitation roles.
Yeah.
Would that be available to both on-call and whole-time firefighters as well? Could that be the reason? Is it?
We don't have rehabilitation roles for on-call.
Could that be the reason why there's a 49% increase in mental health absences? Because they don't have, there's no option for them. So they.
You're right. There's no option for them on station, and there's no option for them to undertake a rehabilitation role. But a number of these have got primary employment, so offering them something that would cover their on-call hours, such as weekends, overnight, that sort of thing. We don't have those roles available here in headquarters. So in terms of mental health issues, a number of these people are having issues in their primary employment, and it's affecting their employment with us. So it can be difficult to work out exactly what is the issue, but it is something that we're focused on, is looking to see exactly what this pattern is. And for some people, their lives are very busy. So if you've got primary employment, plus you've got your on-call, plus you've got your family commitments as well, when things start to go wrong, I think it's their on-call role that they will book sick on rather than their primary employment, because they're thinking about the financial impact on their family.
Okay.
Okay, Ruth, if you could give you a report as well, then perhaps we could.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, good morning all. My name's Ruth Hazel. I'm the Senior Occupational Health Nurse. So I'll take you through the report, but like we said, we probably have questions between us then.
Yeah.
Taking you to point 3. So let's go through the appointments. After COVID, when I was reporting in COVID, obviously things were quite quiet and a lot of things were done by telephone. Appointments have actually increased quite a lot in the last reporting year. As you can see, it's gone up over about 100 appointments just with the normal consultations, let alone the health and fitness advisors. Right, where we've seen an increase in appointments as well is the recruit career employment. Last year for firefighters we were on about 193, this year we're on 328. Partly because we've got a good recruitment process in place for the on-call and whole time, but also like Deborah said earlier on, we had the pending industrial action, so obviously there was a need to recruit auxiliary firefighters. So end of last year, early this year, we were getting them all in when we did. When we were on the weekends, we've seen quite a lot of firefighters in recruitment, and we got the numbers through, which was great. And also in January this year, because during COVID we couldn't do routine medicals because it involved putting people in an audio booth, confined space, doing lung functions, which would have been high risk for COVID. We couldn't do routine medicals. So we employed a nurse in January for a 12-month temporary basis at the moment to get the backlog of medicals done with firefighters as quickly as we could. Up until April, I think she'd done 120 medicals, or 102, sorry. I think I checked with them last week and they're on about 230 at the moment, which we tend to average 400 a year. So we're well on target to be getting back to where we were for the routine medicals. And that's been great because all the other appointments have been coming in. Myself and the other nurse who are permanent wouldn't have been able to deal with all these medicals. So to have somebody extra just focusing on them has been great. So that's been really busy. And there are a lot of them have been coming in as well, actually. We've got very few did not attend with the medicals. I think they haven't seen us for a good few years, so they're so glad to come in. And they've been saying, you know, they've been missing us a little bit, and they do like to have a medical because it's a quick health check for them. The health and fitness advisors, they've highlighted to me how much their appointments have gone up. I think they went up by almost 200. Again, with the considering recruitment, that would have been a lot of those numbers as well, but generally they do a lot of fitness testing. Their numbers don't drop because these fitness tests are done every 18 months to 2 yearly, unless they need it done sooner. So with the health and fitness advisors, like we were talking about earlier on, a risk with fitness and that, if somebody's got a low fitness score between the number of 42 to 44, they are then seen 6 monthly until they increase their fitness, because we don't want these people dropping underneath a gain and then they're not fit. So the boys try and keep an eye on them every 6 to 8 months as well. Attendance of appointments has been great actually. I think last reporting year we had 153 did not attend. So at the moment we've got 70. I think a lot more because they can come into our health instead of answering the phone. I think a lot of them did not attend were not answering the phone last year. Now they're coming into the appointments, it's working well, and they will ring and text and say, can I just check my appointment date? Also, we had a meeting with IT in the last month where we're looking at the text messaging service. They said they can do that quite easily for us, and I think in the next month we're going to be able to send a text message reminder out that week to tell them they've got the appointment, which should help, because some of these appointments are booked a month or so in advance and then they'll forget by the day. Or you ask them to put it in their phone. It is all down to human error. Some of them did not attend is because, in fairness, if they're on station, the nature of the role is they're on station, they might have had a call, they've gone, they haven't been able to ring us to tell us, it looks like they didn't attend, but actually they couldn't attend. So, but that's improving overall. Referrals, I think, I'm not sure if the calendar can go up. The referrals are always on the increase. This is where we talked about the demands at Dog Health at the moment with regards to staffing. The referrals are also on the increase. Musculoskeletal definitely due to the NHS delays, but also mental health referrals and sickness and self referrals. The self referrals, we still had 41 people in the last reporting year who referred themselves for a mental health reason to Rock Health. That's great. It shows that referral process is working and that the people feel comfortable coming to us. Somebody commented this week to me, a firefighter said, it's crazy these days in the car park, they tell me they'd come here for counselling, whereas they would never have done that before. They would have walked out and wouldn't have said a thing, but they commented on how many people tell them that they're seeking support, which is obviously really good for us and for them. Like mentioned by Karen, due to the increase in the referrals appointments, we've had to have the nurse for 12 months. The hours of the doctors have had to be increased. Again, we need to review this again because ultimately everything's increasing. If there's delays with us as well as the NHS, there's longer sickness absence. If we can reduce the sickness absence by having more doctor time in our health and nurse time, then we can get back to work sooner. Karen's covered the ill health retirements and how much was spent with the budget, so I won't go into that. What type of things we've been involved in this year? We always had the participation in the Health and Safety Committee group. We have input into a new, well, the Wellbeing group has been going for a while, but we've decided to call the Wellbeing group Your Health. We felt that was, it showed the employer that they were the priority. So saying Your Health instead of Wellbeing group covered physical and mental health. So we can have a new tab on the internet that says Your Health. It will break down to physical, mental health, menopause, such as things like that. But there'll be things on there that we're inputting on, all to do with prevention. I think the aim with our health at the moment is all about prevention. How do we stop these things happening in the first place? I think with mental health, it is already happening because people come to us sooner now. And a lot of the people I see, when we have our sickness absence meeting now for mental health, that's actually our shortest meeting, because a lot of people we're already seeing for mental health are actually remaining in work. And it's because we keep regular contact with them. We can give them counselling within 2 weeks at the moment. And I think that, ensures their attendance in work, whereas previously they might have booked sick, waited for the referral into Rock Health before declaring what was going on, really. As you're aware, our youth RNISR team were deployed to Turkey and then they went to Malawi. So we're involved in making sure they're ready to go, making sure they've had their vaccinations. So we were involved in that. And what we're doing with them is obviously if they've been deployed to a natural disaster such as Turkey, then we review them when they come in and make sure that mentally and physically, they're okay following the deployment. Physiotherapy service is always our busiest service. Again, this is something we might have to look into. The physio comes to us once a week from Spire Hospital. Amazing physio. They can liaise with the consultants, which is great. So the good thing is that they're coming from the hospital that we use for our treatments. Probably the most qualified physio I've had, and we will put them in as person in with the physio first before doing like MRIs and stuff, because they will ultimately tell us if they need to. So we don't waste money by making assessments ourselves. Our physio is very good at that. At the moment, they're 1 day a week. The issue with that is, you know, somebody could be coming back from surgery, they might have to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks for an appointment. So we are reviewing the physio hours to see if that can be increased, because ultimately, if they can see the physio weekly, they're going to be quicker back in work. What we also, like, you know, suggest to them is that they refer themselves to the firefighters charity. It does so much done in the charity that, especially if they've had an accident, they've had surgery, the firefighters charity will give a week's intense physiotherapy for them, and ultimately that will get them back into work quicker as well. Our partnership continues with Liaison Psychiatry. Referrals were down actually from 35 the previous report in the year to 28. I've added to this report for your information just to see the type of cases that Dr. Tracy Vick in Liaison Psychiatry sees. I think one of the reasons for the reduction in referrals to her is that because we've upped the counselling time, and actually we've got 2 very qualified counsellors, those moderate cases that we might have put in with Liaison Psychiatry, we now can give to our physiotherapist, and they get a physiotherapist counsellor, and they can be seen within 2 to 3 weeks, which is great. At the moment, the Liaison Psychiatry continue to do video call if the person chooses to. I used to joke and say they'd have more anxiety if they had to park in the heath to go down and see her, whereas now they can log on from home and they'll be able to have their assessments, and all therapy is just as effective that way as well. The counselling appointments, as you can see on there, because we've upped the counselling times, we've got a counsellor 4 days a week at the moment. The appointments were increased from 533 the previous reporting year to 755. The unable to attend appointments, generally that could be the counsellor was sick or somebody rang before the appointment to cancel, and therefore we're able to fill that appointment. They did not attend. There was 54 for the year, which is not a lot. And I asked the counsellors why they feel this is. She said, one, it's the nature of their job. So the fact is they might not be able to attend, but also the fact they come for counselling, some people can get anxious and they don't ring beforehand to cancel. They do tend to rebook, but it's just that they haven't let us know. So the stats probably look higher than it is. We still offer the Employment Assistance Programme, which is 24/7 service given by Care First. I can't say that is used as much at the moment because we've got such a good counselling service in-house, which is 4 days a week, like I've said. Now, I've mentioned how we're trying to do preventative stuff with awareness, and like today, the nurses are in control, offering blood pressure, cholesterol and sugar checks. We went last week, and I think out of 16 people we saw, we told 6 to go and see their GP. We're going out to stations as well now to do this type of stuff again, because to me, you know, we've had heart attacks within the fire service, so by going out and checking on them, not waiting the 3 years for a medical, we're preventing it happening in the first place. You know, one of my ideas that I joke about is put a blood pressure machine on every fire service work location. Even if they're playing around with the machine, they're still checking their blood pressure, and they're still likely to go and get it checked with the GP. And I think the health and fitness advisors, if you look at what they're downstairs at the moment doing a workout of the week video, which they're posting. So it's all stuff to prevent this musculoskeletal injuries. So the 2 health and fitness advisors are going on a yoga course in November, because obviously yoga is good for stretching, strengthening, so that type of stuff will prevent some of the musculoskeletal injuries. They did the stair climb challenge, they do walking Wednesdays up here, and I think about 10-15 people walk with them every Wednesday. So all the stuff we're trying to do to prevent, ultimately we can't prevent everything. A lot of musculoskeletal injuries are due to the aging workforce. They're also, by the nature of the job, firefighters, they're in competitive sports, you're going to get rugby injuries, football injuries, so not all of this is relating just to the role, it's a lot of what they're doing outside. You know, you're not going to do an Ironman without getting a shoulder or a knee injury. So everything we're doing is to help prevent this. We're coming along also now with recruitment. So, you know, in the last year, we go to the physical and practical days of recruitment, which we've always suggested, because what was happening with recruitment of firefighters were they were going to the physical and practical days. If they passed all that, they came to a medical with us. It was only at the medical that we knew what health issues they had. If they had any problems with their vision, then we could wait up to 3 months for a GP to write to us to give us more information. So now we go along to the physical and practical days. We do their eyesight there just to see if we need to get them to go and have their eye test done before the medical. We also give them information, thankfully, due to the new data protection laws of subject access requests, they have to have their GP notes given to them within 4 weeks. So as soon as we see them at a physical and practical day, we say to them, this is how you go about getting your medical notes in preparation for the medical. We give them a little bit of information on what to expect at the medical. So usually now, by the time they come to a medical, their GP notes are already in their hands. So we're preventing the delays with recruitment by doing this. I think what we are noticing, what you brought up earlier on about the fitness of firefighters with females and males, generally the level of fitness, I think their business is not as high coming in. I don't think the culture at the moment with young people is to be in the gym all the time, not necessarily. So we are noticing they're not always at their fittest when they come in. So this is why all these other days have been done before that physical and practical day, to make sure they are aware of the level of fitness required. And also, if we ever look to drop these levels, then ultimately these musculoskeletal injuries and that later on are just going to be higher. We need people coming in at their fittest to be able to maintain that throughout their career. So we're doing all that type of work at the moment, and that's things that we're going to do going forward. So I think the first step was going along to the recruitment days. Going forward, we're still looking at things such as the patient management system, because the IT system we use at the moment is quite difficult to get all the information and stats that we need. Like, we'd like to know why these people are off with musculoskeletal. If we could pinpoint, was this injury done on a sporting event outside? Was it due to work? And also, like Karen mentioned, we're obviously going to review the staffing within our health to see if we can, increase the hours permanently. So then obviously we can help reduce the waiting times to get back to work. Any questions from anybody?
Thank you. That was a very informative and interesting report. Very well. Thank you. Any members on any of the 2 reports we've just had?
Councillor Carr's indicated.
Yeah. Thank you again for the detail on the huge amount of good work that's taking place there. I think we should check the evidence base on the need for people coming in at the fittest. Clearly fitness is really important, but everything that you're saying, and again the kind of international research done for me, says that we quite rightly, as people age, don't discriminate against them, and we understand that the older that you are, the more likely you are to get an injury. It says again to me that we need to be going back to those national standards and just looking at where we are unnecessarily excluding people. You don't go into certain sporting clubs the fittest you've ever been. You go in and you learn and you train, and that Sean will know, Councillor Ali Melbourne will know far more about this than me. But actually, I think what it's saying to me is we are still unnecessarily excluding people over some of the, not all, but some of the fitness measures where problem solving skills for everybody would be better around both their physical and mental health. So I hear a overwhelming amount of really great work taking place. I do think from an inclusivity perspective and not excluding people from being part of this amazing workforce, that continue, the research and the evidence base needs to continue to be looked at, and to make sure that we are cutting edge on this, basically. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Any other member? No? Ogden?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that when you mentioned the firefighters do not get priority with the National Health, I think is absolutely appalling. Because as soon as we get firefighters back into work, we're going to up the full complement, we're going to see more injuries out there in the civilian side. So then, the more injuries that happen in the civilian side, that adds to the list. It goes around and around, and it just builds up.
What we can do sometimes, which is quite works quite well, is say they need surgery on the NHS, but it's quite expensive, especially back surgery. You could be talking £17,000-18,000 in Spire Hospital. So what we do to help is that we refer them to the consultant in Spire Hospital that works in their health board. They get their first consultation there, they get their MRI scans there, and the doctor might kindly ask that they then put them on the NHS waiting list. But generally, because they've already been seen by a consultant in SPY and they've had their MRI, that waiting list is a lot less. Because the waiting list with the NHS sometimes is one to see the consultant in the first instance, then an MRI scan. So you're probably talking 4 to 6 months just for that. But we have had cases where they've seen a consultant in SPY, they've had their scan, and actually they've only waited about 3 months on the NHS. So it does work that way as well, especially if it's quite a costly surgery. But you're right, really. Ultimately, we're trying to get them back to work as quick as
You
we
say on the
can.
physical side, I think it's appalling. They've got to wait a long time. Even on the mental side, because these guys, they really see some nasties when they go into domestic scenes. I won't go into any details because I've been shown some photographs once. The firefighters in the South Glamorgan. Not just badly burnt, I won't go into too much detail, but it did turn my stomach. And they're going to be faced with that, and then they're off then with mental issues.
Thankfully with that, with Dr. Tracy Vick, who sees most of those type of cases, you know, we've had some bad incidents on the weekend, which I've already contacted. Normally she will see him within 3 weeks. So we've got that link. It's not the specific referrals like then that the waiting list is with the GP normally, isn't it? With the waiting list. So if they're waiting for other treatment through the GP with regards to mental health, I think through the GP, I think it's about 3 to 4 month wait for a counsellor.
Oh, God.
With our counselling service with 4 times a week. I think we've got like 2 spaces this week, so some that will be filled straight away. So we are getting them in very quick with regards to that. It's just like you said, the physical aspect with getting treatment for it, like knee surgery. I think somebody I know has been on 2-year waiting list for back surgery.
3 hours.
Yeah.
In the old days, I come from a building background. Bricklayers, when they got the age of 48 on average, their backs were shattered.
Yeah.
They went then working on maintenance, then in local authority. And they lasted until 65.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask
Martin,
a question on that. It's just how long have we had to use the private sector for this type of operation? And is it, I would have thought it is common amongst all other fire authorities in Wales and the UK, but just to have some perspective on it. And if we are using the private sector, is there a way that we can perhaps reduce costs by looking at possible agreements or something like that?
I'm not exactly certain when we started using private medical treatment, but I know it's been a number of years. It'll be 10 plus years. In terms of do we get any discount, we use the Welsh Government procurement framework. So they're aware that it's a fire service and it is a competitive process. So that is reviewed every 3 or 4 years, and the price is fixed.
Right. Last
year, I reviewed the contract. It went back to Spire, and they were a successful supplier. And so the rates that we agreed last year will stay in place for the full term of the contract. So that's easier managed. In terms of any partnership arrangements, and we've got the one partnership arrangement with Dr. Tracy Vick through Cardiff, and I think it's competitive, the prices that we're paying, but it's very difficult when the demand is out there from an NHS perspective and from a private perspective, and then for us to come in and try and undercut all of that. That's more of a moral decision by the supplier. But obviously we follow the full procurement rules, making sure it's the most economically advantageous tender that we go with. So we do a match on quality and cost. So I think we get as good a value for money as we can, but if you know of any other way, please tell me.
No. I just pray for the day that we could get everything done under the NHS.
Yeah.
It's a way off, isn't it?
I don't think
It
it's
is, yes.
something that is just happening with the fire service. So I'm aware that within education, within teaching, that there are a number of teachers being given private physiotherapy as they can have that on Saturdays and after school.
Yes.
That saves them then having to pay out for the teacher's been out of school just to go to an appointment for physiotherapy. And equally, I've also seen surgical procedures given to senior staff, senior members, to avoid the long and drawn out process of having to be off school to be on a waiting list, whereas the private surgical procedure can be given. It says here you've got about £4,000. Well, you're gonna get that in a week of certain members of staff being off. Yeah. So I do see the importance of putting the service through a private way of seeing the referrals and the X-rays, and absolutely what you're saying about getting those referrals first. You've got to offset time off with how much it costs, and if you're telling me that it's going to cost £268 to get them to a scan and 178 to a specialist referral, those people could be off for 6 months. Well, that you're talking £500, which is days pay for some members of the fire service. I do see the absolute benefit in having this, and equally you were saying about about mental health going up. I think there's been a massive change in how people see mental health. Up to about 3 or 4 years ago, just before COVID, mental health was seen as something that you didn't discuss, and actually it was a slight on you if you had mental health issues. Now, mental health issues are seen as the norm, and I think we need to be pushing that agenda far, far more, so that we do tackle and we do get to them before the mental health issues become larger, and we are giving them opportunity to see counsellors before they get to the point where they're taking the time off. Because like I said, the offset of the cost of sending them to a counsellor before it gets bad is going to come back tenfold to us, because we're going to see people are not going to take the time off. They're discussing it with their colleagues that they have issues, so their colleagues are then supporting them. That's what I was saying again about the whole time firefighters versus the on-call firefighters. If they're discussing these issues, if they're talking to their colleagues and they've got their advice from them, then there's that family issue that you've got with certain watchers, and the on-call then may not be able to discuss their issues that they have with the fire service with other people because they're on call, but they're okay, or there's a difference with their main part of job. So I don't know if that's something that could be looked into as well.
Okay, any other member want to come in? I can't see any other member. I mean, mental health is an important issue. People are not so favorably admit that they've got mental health issues. So then it's open, which is a very good thing, for people to discuss. So perhaps, as was said, we could perhaps look further into some more reports in the future and how that's going along. Okay, nobody else? Right, thank you. We could go on then to the firefighters' pension schemes, Alison Reid.
Yeah, thank you,
And
Chair.
before you start, does anybody know the outcome of the High Court, ruling on the WASPI Women's Pension Scheme that went to the High Court in June? Have anybody heard anything?
No.
Nothing yet.
They've kept it very quiet, haven't they? Because it was in the High Court in June.
My mother's one, so she's on top of it.
I'm one. That's why I'm interested.
Tells me it all.
But no, nothing. No, sorry about that. Right, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Right, good morning, members. My name is Alison Reid. I'm People Services Director. This report covers the Welsh Government circulars that are received by the service, mainly in relation to firefighter pensions, but there are two that I put in that relate to performance and stats for the service, just so that you can see the chronological order, because they do come out in number order, so it's helpful for you to see where the gaps are or not. So Fire Authority is the scheme manager for firefighter pensions, as most of you will know, and HR and Equalities are the receiver of the circulars, and from a sort of audit and assurance perspective. So what I've done is Appendix 1 contains a list of all the circulars that we've received, And you will see in bold under each circular on the right in the summary box, the action that's been taken for each circular. Mostly the circulars need attention from our pension administrator, and that's RCT Pensions, and they are shared internally with the senior management team for information. Some of the topics covered in the circulars are things like employee and employer contribution rates, and obviously needs attention through the pensions administrator. So just really for information and for your assurance that these are being acted upon.
Any questions? There's an awful lot of work being done on these pension schemes by the Welsh Government. I mean, you know, Steve's favourite discussion matter.
Unions happy, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
So
Yeah, we're one of a handful of fire and rescue services implementing McLeod, so immediate detriment. And so we are processing what's termed category 1 cases. So we are allowing our employees who are currently in service the opportunity of retiring with 2 pensions estimates. So from a sort of trade union perspective, they welcome that piece of work that we're doing. So
Yeah. Accept the report.
Accept the report, thank you, Ben. All happy on that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Alison. If we could go to the next item then, the grievance and discipline, Gemma.
Yes, that's me. Good morning, members and everyone here. My name is Gemma Wells, and I was recently appointed the HR Manager for Employee Relations. So the first part of this report is based around the grievances that we received between the financial year April 22 to March 23. So 1.1, just giving you a short explanation, the grievance procedure provides individual employees with a formal mechanism for highlighting concerns, and they'll be in relation to the way that they feel they've been treated, perhaps by a manager or colleague, or in relation to organisational procedures. Just further down, 1.4, just to note that the breakdown of figures contained within the report are given in general terms with no specific case detail, just to ensure confidentiality and anonymity of the employees concerned. So over to 2.1. During the period April 22 to March 23, we've received 22 grievances in total, of which 2 were progressed and managed under the grievance procedure official, if you like. Of the remaining 20, 8 were managed outside the procedure to a conclusion. 1 was eventually withdrawn. 1 individual resigned their role prior to a resolution of the grievance. 1 application was declined as the resolution requested was not in scope of the procedure, and 9 of them are currently ongoing, so they would have come in towards the end of the period, and they're still ongoing at the moment. It is relevant to notice this is an increase for the previous year when 16 grievances were received. There are a number of different factors, I think, behind this, but it is worth noting at the bottom of 2.1.2 that 4 of the grievances that are currently ongoing are linked to an overall, a sort of more complicated overall issue, linking with potential disciplinary, and that has been passed as one case linked to Narrow Cree HR, who are currently assisting with our caseload. And 3 of the others are related to the way in which the additional leave day for Green Book staff has been administered. A rationale has been provided to unions for consideration. There's a difficulty, there's a lack of understanding around it at the moment, I think. But we're waiting for all the unions to come back to us with perhaps some proposals of their own. Of the 22 grievances that we received this last financial year, 6 were from whole-time employees, 2 from on-call, 13 from corporate, and 1 from a control employee. In Appendix 1, you'll see the reasons behind these grievances and the outcomes are shown. There's a range of different topics, to be honest. A lot of it, I think, is perceived unfairness. I think that would be a good way to categorise a lot of the grievances. That could be communication, perhaps, is something we need to work on. I think what I'll do is come back to the end when people probably have some questions, and we can perhaps have a conversation about what the reasons for this increase might be. So moving on then to the disciplines. During the period 22 to 23, there have been 31 reported alleged breaches in discipline, compared to only 15 in the previous year. So obviously that's a significant increase. Of the 31 reported alleged disciplinary breaches, 13 were whole-time employees, 13 were on call, 4 corporate and 1 against a control employee. So moving on to 2.2.4, that will give you a summary of the outcomes of the cases. So 3 resulted in dismissal, 3 final written warning, no written warnings, no verbal warnings, 9 were addressed through managerial action, which might cover, it covers a range of different strategies, but it might be a recording discussion around the behaviour, maybe coaching around communication behaviour, or provision of more guidance. That would be where the allegations were less serious overall. 1 case was looked into and required no further action. 3 were involved resignation prior to the disciplinary hearing. And 12 of these cases were still ongoing, so they've come in the latter part of the year and they're ongoing at the moment. None of the cases in the last year have included payment in lieu of notice. Point 2.2.5, I did make a slight amendment to this to come in today, as I realised upon re-looking at this that there has been 1 appealed disciplinary hearing outcome in the previous year rather than none, but the original outcome was upheld. In 6 of the 19 resolved discipline cases, employees were suspended from duty while their case was being investigated, and that was 2 whole-time and 4 on-call. In 5 of the ongoing discipline cases, employees are currently still suspended. I think at the point of writing this, I think 1 of those, maybe 2 of those, have been reinstated back to work in the interim period. I've got a slight breakdown according to the subject matter, if you like, that isn't in the report, that might be of interest to members, where I've just looked through the nature of the allegations against people to see where the highest areas might be. And failures to follow procedures covers 8 of the cases. Poor behaviour, usually seen outside of the workplace, accounts for 6 of them, and arrests involving alcohol, drugs made up 6, and the other cases were smattered on lots of different reasons. If anybody would like to ask any questions, I'm sure there are.
Thank you for that. Any member? Dan?
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the report. It's very enlightening. But my main concern is when you look at the breakdown of the types of employees, obviously putting in grievances, there's 13 from corporate staff, when obviously the majority of staff in the service obviously whole-time firefighters, and then obviously retained firefighters. So I just wanted to see, is any particular issues obviously in the control department why no more grievances there, or is it that there are issues happening at firefighter level, but they're just less likely to make complaints, and how can we support staff, obviously, who are firefighters, to make complaints if they're feeling they should be able to, but for some reason they're not. So I'm just concerned, obviously, the number in corporate is a lot higher when staff, I don't know if it's that percentage, but staff, they're a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Of the, I think it was 13, wasn't it, that were, 13 corporate. So 7 of those are actually linked to just 2 cases are all clustered of the same, around the same things. I think not to want to blame the pandemic for everything that's wrong in the world, but since we've returned to work after COVID, I think people are generally more aware of their surroundings, more aware of their relationships, and they are, in general, seem to be feeling a bit more disgruntled, to be honest with you. And I know that with our corporate staff, there's some unrest on the fact that there is no hybrid working policy. That seems to feature in, not so much in the grievances, but it's in the background of things. I did do a little bit of research on this just to look into nationwide the differences in these things. And in the last 2 years, nearly 30% of employees have seen a significant rise in the number of grievances that have been put in. Just seems to be the way people are feeling since they've come back to work post-pandemic. There's been changes.
They enjoyed being home, you
I
mean,
think
and now
they
they're
just,
back.
yeah, I don't like to say that, but
Say it
yes.
as it is.
Yeah, people are very disgruntled about lots of things, and perhaps they've spent a long time when a lot of us were working from home, they haven't had a lot of close relationships with work colleagues. Perhaps coming back into that environment is proving challenging for some people. The second part of the question, Councillor Norton, just to say, I think that our corporate employees are mainly based here in headquarters in the same location as HR. And it may be that HR is more visible to them, they're more aware of what they can and can't do, or may, in terms of filing grievances, I mean. And perhaps there is a bit of an ethos on station of resolving issues on station rather than coming through to HR. We are putting things in place to try to, not that we want to attract more grievances, but to be more available to our colleagues, our uniform colleagues. And the employee relations team have embarked upon a rolling programme of station visits, so that they get to know the faces, they realise we're human and that we're not going to automatically assume terrible things are wrong, and that they can come and speak to us, they can ask for advice. And we have seen an increase in contact from that, and the colleagues on station have been very receptive to that. So hopefully things will settle, and perhaps we'll see an evening out of things. I hope the numbers don't go up any further, but maybe if they are, it's because people are more willing to talk to us about things and allow us to help them resolve their grievances. So
it's quite easy, I think, to put a firefighter voice over a survey monkey or something like that, which would be, it could be anonymous, and that would get you lots of information.
That's one of my notes, is that to look at, to sort of drill down a bit more into the data, because we've got these figures and we can say what people have been grieved by, if that's the right terminology, but we can't see all the other things that are bubbling under the surface that never quite get to us. And I agree, some anonymous surveys maybe, just to take the temperature of how people are feeling about their relationships with colleagues, that sort of thing, would be very useful.
But don't you think, perhaps not now in the immediate future, that further on, when people are getting so used to staying at home, working from home, that we are storing up perhaps more mental health issues?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, potentially. I think that there's a lot of research on hybrid working, not just home working, to say that it is beneficial for mental health to have a sort of a part home working approach, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that's a positive way to go, and most places are going or have gone that way already. Yeah, I think you are right.
But there's lots of issues, isn't there? I mean, if you say to all of your staff, right, you will all now work from home, how do we know what their living conditions are like? Do they want to be at home? Do they want to be there? Perhaps that's some women's way of getting out to their husbands, way and have a bit of peace for a day.
That's why flexible approaches seem to be the best, where you could do it.
Let's be honest. I mean, I wouldn't like to stay in with my husband all day every day.
There's a lack of accountability as well, isn't there? So there's that lack of accountability from management because they're not quite sure what you're doing. Plus, you've got that confidence of being in your own home. So when you do come into the office and somebody's on your back and asking questions immediately, if you're at home, you can, I'll have my cup of tea and then I'll take that. But if you're in the office, that's expected to be quite done immediately. So I think there's that pressure, that change after 2 years of being at home and going, well, I'll have my cup of tea first, then I'll deal with that issue. I'll focus myself first. Whereas in the office, then it's like, no, do it now.
Yeah, and you get people's immediate reaction then, rather than considered reaction. And you've got issues. Yes, and you've got issues of communication, and a lot of things, from what I can see of the detail, they stem from poor communication.
Dan, you wanted to come back?
Oh, sorry, Dan.
Sorry, obviously you mentioned at the moment we don't have a hybrid working policy, and you've also mentioned that's part of the reason why you think in the background we've had a higher level of complaints in the corporate workforce. Obviously we can't have hybrid working policy for our attained or on-call firefighters because obviously you have to be on site to do the job. Yes. But would it be possible for the corporate workforce to actually look at having a hybrid work policy? Because as again, you could have benefits for them coming in sometimes, obviously in the week, building a relationship with work colleagues, but also then obviously having flexibility to be able to work at home part of the week, and that could help with obviously retaining staff in the long term and recruiting staff in a very competitive, as you said earlier as well, in an employees market at the moment.
Thank you, Dan. Kate, do you want to come in?
Yeah, again, I think, you know, there's we're sort of starting to identify some of the kind of opportunities and challenges here, which is great to see. But again, let's just keep bringing it back to the evidence base, because there's an awful lot of existing evidence on this now that can help to inform future policies, and also for us to be part of informing that as well through, you know, the organisational experience, which is around having that involvement, social partnership with the workforce, isn't it, to be listening and hearing in the way that you are, and responding to that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? No? Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
If we could go on to the next report then, Alison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report provides members with information relating to the launch of a new service called FRS Speaker. So this service is partnered with Crime Stoppers, which who are an independent charity and are known nationally across the UK as a confidential line provided to individuals to report information into that line. So we have partnered with Crime Stoppers, excuse me, to provide the line to our staff. We launched the service on the 6th of April. We publicised the service across our stations and headquarters, as well as control. So any of our properties, you can perhaps walk along the corridor and see posters, little symbols around FRS Speaker. And this is available alongside our current mechanisms for people to voice concerns. So we currently have a whistleblowing policy. Staff can raise concerns through their line manager, and currently they can raise concerns through to the culture survey, through to the KC, who's leading the culture survey for us. In terms of the process, the individual phones or can email a line or a confidential email account. This is manned 24/7 by Crime Stoppers. The individual will share their concern and can elect to have a two-way conversation or a one-way conversation with the service. Mostly, from what I've seen so far, individuals are electing for one-way communication. The concern is logged and it's passed onto a confidential inbox email account within service. That concern is triaged by myself or Geraint as Corporate Services Directors, and following that triage, the concern is passed on to our investigators, fact finders. So that would be either internally to our resolution officers or through narrow key HR who are supporting us on our investigations. We received 6 cases or 6 concerns so far of varying nature, some involving behaviours, other involving process, and we've signed up to a 12-month initial contract with Crime Stoppers, which we've agreed to review after 12 months. The reason for bringing the report to this committee at this stage is for your awareness, for you to see the numbers of cases that we are processing, and for you to be aware that we will do an end of year review as well and bring that to this committee. So at this point, sharing the numbers with you, sharing the marketing materials that went out, and just alerting you to the fact that there will be a follow-up report at the end of the year.
Thank you, Alison. Any questions, members? This is new. Bear in mind it is only been going for 3 months.
So I just
Good question.
scanned those.
Just a remark, this is the first emails. I think it's a really good initiative.
Yeah.
I don't know if Alison can just give us an indication of the cost of providing this.
Yes, I can. So the cost was around £5,000. It's based on head count,
Right.
which we thought was a reasonable investment. But we'll review at the end of the year in terms of cost benefit analysis.
Yeah. So at this rate, we're probably expecting the response will increase during that 12 months as it beds in. So in terms of numbers, then it would, I would assume, give good value for money.
It could. It's interesting because at the moment we've got the cultural review option as well. So there's different mechanisms for people to report. So we'll probably just need to monitor it and see where it goes. It'll be interesting to see at the end of the year when the cultural review is reported if the numbers go up, because they haven't got an alternative mechanism.
Good.
So, yeah.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. With the organisation which you've gone into now, the police normally advertise or raise issues which they want to get information on. Will the fire authorities or our fire authority actually do that type of thing, or is it just gathering information for whatever?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Watkins. I think at the moment it's a gathering and investigating what comes into the system. I think probably we will want to keep an eye on the themes coming into the system, and if there is an area that needs further investigation, then we probably will want to do a bit more of that in terms of the way that you've described the police approach. It's early days for us at the moment. I think the numbers are relatively low currently. But again, I think it's just a case of watch it and keep reviewing it to see what's coming in and how we resolve the concerns, because everyone so far has elected a one-way conversation, and that's to sort of park the information with Crime Stoppers and the service. And we have seen a couple of themes coming through. We will keep an eye on those to see what more we need to do.
Okay, when are we likely to get a review and a report back on the outcome of this project?
Yeah, thank you. So Crime Stoppers will be supplying us with a sort of an overall report. So I think probably towards the end of the year when we do our annual review, we'll include the Crime Stoppers report, and that will break down themes. So the themes include things like a health and safety breach, misogynistic comments, behaviours are not in line with service expectations. So we can share perhaps those themes as we see them coming throughout the year.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member? No. Thank you, Alison. If you could go on then to the annual report of complaints.
I'll take this one up, Chair. Sarah's on annual leave, so she's kindly delegated upwards on this one. So, remember, this is the first report of this type. Obviously, it follows in a similar vein to the report which Alison's just presented and Gemma's report on grievances. So it's really to set out the detail or numbers of complaints and compliments that we received during a financial year. So this report, the first one, covers off the period 22-23, and obviously due to the sensitive nature, some of the information that's put into certainly around complaints, we have to consider the GDPR requirements. So any details will always be anonymised in these type of reports. It's fair to say that the service has got a commitment, so that we expect a positive experience for anyone that comes into contact with the service, and we expect all of our behaviours and values to reflect that. Unfortunately, there will be occasions where we don't always live up to our expectations, and that naturally will lead to complaints coming in. But also, on a positive note, on a daily, weekly basis, we do receive a lot of compliments as a service for the services that we do provide. Where we do receive compliments, they are always reported on a weekly basis through a routine notice, so that all members of staff can see the type of compliments that we get in. For the period 22-23 then, so we received 66 complaints in total and 84 compliments. Going on to the more granular detail of the report, you can see in paragraph 2.3 that the numbers of complaints has increased significantly, so by 69% compared to the previous year. There was no complaints escalated on to the Public Service Ombudsman, and the number of compliments was reduced compared to the previous year. So the report goes on to show the numbers in a tabular format over the last 5 years, and you can see the numbers of complaints are increasing year on year. And then we categorise the complaints into 4 areas, whether it's behaviours, driving complaints, actual service delivery, or whether there's various other reasons, which is categorised under miscellaneous. And the table shows the breakdown there. And then the pie chart sets out the actual percentage. So in 22-23, there was 61% of the complaints were related to behaviours, 20% miscellaneous, 13% for driving, and 6% for service delivery. I think on a positive note, again, the number of compliments seems to be at a high level. And the table in paragraph 2.6 shows the numbers over the last 5 years. Whilst it has reduced in the last year, it's positive to say that each year the numbers of compliments we receive does outstrip the number of complaints. So it's just given that level of balance. The one thing we'll always do in terms of complaints is look to see where we can glean the lessons learned and see where we can improve our service delivery and our customer experience. So as part of this process, is reviewing all the complaints that are gathered each year, gathering the themes and seeing what we can do to make improvements and work with the rep bodies and our staff to try and reduce the number if possible. That being said, and it's been commented earlier, there is more of a theme, more of a nature for people to be willing to raise concerns, willing to make complaints. And sign of the times. But the one thing that we do is we actively promote now what our complaints procedure is. So that's published through our website and wider on social media. If there's negative comments on social media, we'll always refer them to our reporting procedures and ask them if they want to use them or request further information. So that will naturally, I think, lend to itself to seeing more numbers of complaints coming in. But ultimately, what we want to do is try and, get into the detail as to why we're receiving those complaints and act on them and learn from it.
Right.
So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Any member on this report? Are we all happy with it?
Yeah, could I just ask,
Yeah.
Chair, it's just the category of behaviours that in itself covers a number of issues. And if, for example, someone who's not been polite or whatever, has there been any attempt to try to measure it, the different types of behaviours that are happening?
There hasn't, you know, as I say, this is the first report of this type, and you know, that's part of the recommendation, is to ask, you know, is there more detail that members want? Have you got examples from your home authorities where you see perhaps a different type of report of this that we can build on this and improve it going forward? And is there a more, you know, frequency? Would you like to see us more than just an annual report?
Yeah, so I think if we can try to you know, hone down on particular problematic behaviours, then we're able to tackle them as well, aren't we? So I think that'll be useful in time, really.
The one thing I forgot to mention in the report is that sometimes the complaint will come in initially as a complaint, but then it may lead itself on to either a further grievance or actually into disciplinary action. So it may escalate through the process.
Adrian?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was on the behavioural aspect again. It's a big slice of the cake, and I was just wondering, are we, well, like Glyn just said, are we looking into it more thoroughly? Because obviously the behaviour, you would expect our staff to be 100% the way they speak to the public or whatever they're doing, is if this could be looked into for a further report.
Because the one thing, Councillor, you know, all allegations, all complaints that come in are taken seriously, so they're all responded to. Some do come in anonymously. We'll always try and, you know, make communication back to you know, further investigate. But every single complaint that comes in is investigated, and if necessary, like I said, it may escalate to further action. So if it is inappropriate behaviour and it is found to be, you know, serious, or you know, there's evidence to support that complaint, it will naturally escalate itself through the process and lead to further action.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Like I say, I just do think that the majority of people tend to find complaining easier than complimenting.
Oh, yeah.
That's just the nature of
That's
people, I
right,
think.
Yeah.
Could we stop Kelly, who Jake away, to stop sending in the compliments as well, please? Right. Any other member? No? Okay, thanks. If we could go to the forward work programme, Alison, you've got something to add to this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we were just looking at the volume of the reports that we would bring into this committee over the next 2 meetings. And we were wanting to propose that we plug another meeting in probably around September time, early September. There is so much coming through that we're just conscious of the sort of time, and it might be more efficient to try and get a report, a meeting in for, and I think the date we looked at was around the 11th of September, but we'll come out with a formal request for that, if that's okay. There are a couple of additional reports that we need to add into here, and I'd quite like to add those onto the programme. So we need to undertake a pay review, which is not currently on here. We've just had the pay body benchmarking exercise that's come in, and I'd like us to do a report on the culture review as well at some point, which will probably generate a bit of a debate. So just trying to rebalance the meetings going forward. But yeah, if you could just plug that into your diaries as a tentative, and we'll come out and confirm if that's okay.
Kate, are you happy with that?
I do just want to note that for people on scrutiny, there are a lot of meetings in September for members on Mondays and then on the Tuesday. It feels like it's quite heavy commitment. All of the things you've just mentioned, though, are really important. When you started speaking, I was wondering whether actually this is about whether some of these reports, you know, we don't necessarily need to discuss in full every time. So whether there's just a little bit more guidance in the pre-meeting as to what we get into an agenda and what we note, to give more space to those more pressing issues. And I suppose, Chair, it's a conversation to take offline as to, is there a smarter way to do it without overburdening people's quite crowded diaries, because everyone's trying to cram back everything back in, or do we need to just bite the bullet? So I think it's helpful to have the date, but I wonder whether we do a quick check offline as to whether we're doing it in the smartest way. Probably are. Just at the back of my mind to just be checking that.
I'm sure we've discussed that with Kate Gum.
Yeah, could I just check? I've got a 10:30 meeting in as an agenda meeting. Have I written that down wrong?
Is that on the
Same,
11th?
the 11th, yeah.
It's possibly fire authority agenda, is it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's fire authority agenda meeting. So what we do if there's a HR committee meeting that morning, we'd have the HR committee first and then the agenda meeting straight after it.
Okay.
Okay, everybody happy with squashing some more meetings in?
Yes, we're already.
Okay, any other items? Anybody? No?
No. No.
Thank
Happy.
you. Thank you all for your attendance,
Thank you.
and see you next week.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.